walked into the bridal boutique 10 minutes early, expecting mirrors and champagne and Lauren helping me choose white lace. Instead, I found my fiancé Daniel holding my sister's hand. Lauren turned to me, her face glowing, and said the words that stopped my heart. "We're getting married." My mother stood behind them, arms crossed, expression cold. "Be happy for them, Emily," she said flatly, like I was being asked to pass the salt. The boutique assistant looked uncomfortable. Other customers whispered. I felt my face burn as Daniel refused to meet my eyes. "What?" I whispered. "Daniel and I are in love," Lauren said, stroking the ring on her finger. A ring that looked nothing like the one Daniel claimed he couldn't afford for me yet. My knees wanted to buckle. My throat closed. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just turned and walked out, my footsteps echoing on the polished floor. Behind me, Daniel called out softly, "You'll understand someday." I pushed through the glass doors into the cold air, my hands shaking so hard I could barely grip my car keys. Oh, I understood. I understood more than he thought. I made it 3 blocks before I pulled over. My hands gripped the steering wheel as the sobs came. Ugly, gasping, raw. The kind of crying that makes your chest hurt. But halfway through, something inside me shifted. I remembered the credit card bill I'd paid last month when Daniel said his business account was temporarily frozen. I remembered co-signing the loan he swore he'd handle. I remembered covering his rent twice, his car insurance, his phone bill. I thought about the folder at home stuffed with receipts, bank transfers, and apologies that always started with, "Just this once, babe." My crying stopped. My breathing steadied. They didn't steal a prize. They stole a burden. I wiped my face with the back of my hand and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes looked different, harder, clearer. Right there in that car with mascara streaks on my cheeks, I made a vow. I wouldn't expose him. I wouldn't cause drama. I would simply stop protecting him from himself. That night, I spread everything across my kitchen table like a detective building a case. Bank statements, loan documents, screenshots of texts where Daniel promised to pay me back next week. The co-signed business loan sat at the top of the pile. $23,000. Daniel hadn't paid a single installment in 4 months. The bank had been emailing me weekly. I found unpaid credit cards he'd opened using my address. Subscriptions to services he needed for the business that charged my account automatically. Even a parking ticket collection notice. I sorted everything chronologically, my hands steady now, my mind sharp. This wasn't about revenge. This was about survival. Then I saw it. A new email notification from the loan company. Subject line: final notice before collections. Daniel had been telling me for weeks that it was taken care of. Another lie in a long chain of lies. I sat back, staring at the evidence of 3 years I'd wasted. Lauren thought she won. She had no idea what she'd just inherited. The financial advisor's office smelled like coffee and leather. Mrs. Chen listened carefully as I explained everything. Her expression neutral and professional. "You need to legally separate yourself from all of his financial obligations," she said, pulling up forms on her computer. "It's possible, but it requires documentation and swift action." Over the next hour, she walked me through the process. Remove my name from the co-signed loan. Dispute any debts tied to my credit. File formal notices with every institution. "What happens to him?" Yes. She glanced up. "He becomes solely responsible. If he's planning anything major, like a wedding, he'll discover very quickly that his credit won't support it." Something in her tone made me pause. She'd seen cases like this before. "Will this hurt me legally?" Yes. "Not at all. You're simply exercising your rights. Everything we're doing is by the book." I signed the papers, each signature feeling like a weightlifting. As I left, Mrs. Chen smiled. "If he's planning anything major, he'll get a rude awakening." For the first time in weeks, I smiled back. Lauren's first text came 2 days later. "You're being dramatic. We're still family." Then my mother called. "You can't just cut us off. You're making this harder than it needs to be." I blocked both numbers. Work became my sanctuary. I threw myself into my projects, stayed late, volunteered for assignments no one else wanted. My boss noticed. My coworkers noticed. But my family kept pushing. Relatives sent messages. Aunts called asking me to be reasonable. Even my younger cousin texted, confused about why I wasn't at Sunday dinner anymore. I ignored all of it, focusing instead on rebuilding stability. New routines, new boundaries, new peace. Then my mother showed up at my apartment. "We're having a family dinner next Saturday," she said through the door. "Daniel will be there. You need to come and show you're mature about this." Every part of me wanted to refuse. But then I thought about Mrs. Chen's smile. About the paperwork that was already processing. Open the door. "Fine. I'll be there." My mother looked surprised, then satisfied. She had no idea what was coming. The dining room felt smaller than I remembered. Lauren sat close to Daniel, her hand on his arm. My mother served roast chicken like nothing had changed. Daniel talked loudly about his new business expansion and the upcoming wedding. Everyone listened, nodding, pretending I wasn't sitting there in silence. "We've got everything under control," Daniel said confidently. "Even handled that old loan situation." I looked up slowly. "The loan?" I asked, my voice calm. He nodded. "Yeah, all squared away. Told you I'd take care of it." My mother smiled approvingly. Lauren beamed. I set down my fork carefully. "You mean the loan I legally removed myself from 2 weeks ago?" The room went silent. Daniel's face drained of color. "What? I'm no longer co-signed. You're solely responsible now. I assumed you knew since you've been handling it so well." His mouth opened then closed. Lauren looked between us, confused. My mother frowned. "Emily, that's legal," I finished. "Completely legal. I have the documentation if anyone wants to see it." Daniel's hand trembled slightly as he reached for his water glass. I smiled and took another bite of chicken. Daniel cornered me in the hallway as I was leaving. "You can't do this," he hissed, his face red. "I needed you on that loan. How am I supposed to?" "Not my problem anymore," I said, reaching for my coat. He grabbed my arm. Not hard but desperate. "Emily, please. I'm planning a wedding. I need credit. You need to let go of my arm." He did immediately but stayed blocking the doorway. "Just reconsider. We can work something out. I'll pay you back, I promise. Like you promised the last 15 times. His jaw clenched. "You're being vindictive. I'm being smart. There's a difference." I pushed past him and left. My hands didn't shake until I got to my car. 3 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "Is this about Daniel?" I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I didn't respond. But I saved the number. Something told me I'd need it later. The call came on a Tuesday morning. The voice was older, tired, apologetic. "Emily, this is Catherine, Daniel's mother." I pulled over, my stomach tightening. "I'm so sorry for everything he put you through," she continued. "I know what happened. I know about Lauren. I need to ask you something." "What?" "The collections agency called about a car loan. They said if we don't pay by Friday, they'll repossess the vehicle. Daniel said you'd help. He said you promised." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Mrs. Patterson, I didn't promise anything. I can't help anymore." She was quiet for a moment. Then softer. "He also said you promised to help pay for his wedding." The lie hit me like cold water. "I never promised that," I said clearly. "I was never asked. I wouldn't have agreed." "I didn't think so," she whispered. "He's lying again, isn't he?" "Yes." She sighed long and sad. "I'm sorry, Emily. For all of it." After we hung up, I sat in my car staring at nothing. Daniel was still lying. Still manipulating. Still assuming I'd clean up his messes. But this time I wouldn't. 2 weeks later, everything started falling into place. For me. My boss called me into her office. "Emily, we're promoting you to senior analyst. You've earned it." The raise was significant. Enough to finally move into a better apartment, one with actual sunlight and space that felt like mine. I signed the lease that weekend. The apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibility. No memories. No Daniel. No drama. I bought new furniture. Nothing expensive, just clean and simple. I hung curtains. I placed plants by the window. For the first time in years I felt peace. Then my phone buzzed. A group text from Lauren to the entire family. "Amazing news. Daniel booked the venue. Thank you to everyone who helped make this possible." I knew exactly what helped meant. My mother had probably given them money. Maybe my aunt. People who believed Daniel's version of events. I set my phone down and looked around my new living room. Let them spend their money. Let them believe his promises. I was done saving anyone but myself. The calls started 3 weeks later. "Is this Emily Morrison? You're listed as the contact for Daniel Patterson's account. I'm calling about an unpaid invoice for catering services under Daniel Patterson. Your number was provided as. This is Elegant Events. We have a venue deposit that bounced. Are you still associated with?" Each time, I calmly explained I was no longer connected to Daniel financially and directed them to Lauren. The vendors sounded confused. Frustrated. One even apologized. The unpaid balances kept growing. I could hear it in their voices. They were chasing money Daniel promised but couldn't deliver. Then one evening, someone knocked on my door so hard it rattled the frame. I looked through the peephole. Lauren stood there, her face blotchy, her hands shaking. "Open the door." "Why didn't you cover the invoice?" she screamed before I could speak. "What invoice?" "The venue. They called me about a bounced deposit. Your name was on the file. From when Daniel and I were engaged," I said calmly. "I removed myself months ago. You ruined everything." Her voice cracked. "This was supposed to be perfect." I stepped aside. "Come in. We need to talk." Lauren paced my living room like a caged animal, her voice rising and falling between anger and panic. "Daniel said you'd handle it. He said you always handled things. He said." "He lied," I interrupted. "Sit down." "He didn't. You're trying to ruin our wedding because you're jealous." I pulled out my laptop, opened a folder, and turned the screen toward her. "This is what Daniel owes. Credit cards, unpaid loans, vendor deposits, collections notices. $60,000. Her face went pale. "That's not possible," she whispered. "It's all documented. He's been hiding this from you the same way he hid it from me." She scrolled through the files, her hands trembling. "He told me you were bitter. That you made up lies about him. I'm not making this up. Call the vendors yourself." She stood abruptly, shaking her head. "You're lying. You have to be." She grabbed the folder of overdue notices I'd printed, stormed to the door, and slammed it behind her. I sat back exhausted. She'd taken the evidence. Now she'd have to face it. According to my cousin, the fight between Lauren and Daniel lasted 2 hours. She confronted him with the notices. He exploded, calling her paranoid, accusing her of listening to me instead of trusting him. Their first real fight. The cracks were forming. Meanwhile, I kept moving forward. I went to work. I decorated my apartment. I met friends for coffee. I was thriving. Then the invitation arrived in my mailbox. Thick, embossed cardstock with gold lettering. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Lauren Morrison and Daniel Patterson." The card felt expensive. Too expensive. I turned it over, studying the design. Custom printing, premium paper, calligraphy addressing. None of it was cheap. I wondered who was paying for it. Then I remembered, probably no one yet. I set the invitation on my counter and stared at it. They were still pretending everything was fine. But pretending doesn't pay bills. My father called me a week later, asking to meet for lunch. We hadn't spoken much since the breakup. He'd stayed neutral, which I appreciated. We met at a quiet diner. He looked older, tired. I never liked him, he said after we ordered. And blinked. Daniel. He nodded. I suspected he was using you. I just didn't know how to say it without sounding controlling. Why are you telling me now? He hesitated. Because I need you to know something. A few weeks before everything happened, Daniel approached me asking for investment money. $50,000. Said it was for his business. My stomach dropped. What did you say? I said no. Told him if his business was solid, a bank would fund it. He paused. 2 days later, he was engaged to Lauren. The timeline hit me like a fist. Daniel had been planning his escape before he even left. Did you tell Mom? Yes. She didn't want to hear it. I sat back processing. Thank you for telling me. He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You're stronger than all of them, Emily. Don't forget that. The vendor disaster spread like wildfire. According to the family gossip chain, Daniel's credit card bounced on multiple deposits. The florist, the photographer, the DJ. One by one, vendors started pulling out. The venue called Lauren directly, demanding full payment within 48 hours or they'd release the date. My phone buzzed constantly with updates from relatives who didn't realize I didn't care anymore. Then Lauren sent me a message. Please. Need you. I stared at the text for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me remembered when we were kids, before competition and jealousy poisoned everything between us. I agreed to meet her for coffee. She looked awful, puffy eyes, hair unwashed, hands shaking around her cup. The wedding's falling apart, she whispered. Every vendor is asking for money up front now. Daniel keeps saying it's handled, but nothing's handled. I can't bail you out, I said gently. I know. I don't know what to do. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Figure out who Daniel really is, I said. Before it's too late. As I stood to leave, she whispered. He told me. You owe him. Stop. I owe him. She nodded miserably. I walked away without another word. That night I couldn't sleep. Daniel's lie that I somehow owed him gnawed at me. I pulled up my bank records, searching for anything I'd missed. Then I found it. 2 months ago, there was an inquiry on the old co-signed loan. Someone had tried to reopen it, to pull additional funds against the original agreement. The request was denied because I'd already legally removed myself. But the attempt was there. Time-stamped. Documented. Daniel had tried to use my name without telling me. My hands shook as I screenshot everything. This wasn't just lying anymore. This was fraud. I called the loan company the next morning, explaining what I'd found. The representative sounded concerned. We'll freeze all activity on this account and flag it for investigation, she said. Thank you for reporting this. I hung up, my heart pounding. I hadn't attacked Daniel. I'd simply followed protocol. But the consequences would be devastating. My mother showed up at my apartment unannounced, her face tight with anger. This is your fault, she said the moment I opened the door. What is? The wedding. The vendors. Everything. You poisoned Lauren against Daniel. I laughed, sharp and bitter. I didn't have to. Daniel did that himself. He told me everything. How you abandoned him financially. How you're sabotaging them out of jealousy. And you believed him. She stepped closer. You've always been difficult, Emily. Always made things harder than they needed to be. Something inside me snapped. You helped create this, I said, my voice steady and cold. You stood there in that boutique and told me to be happy while my fiancé held my sister's hand. You chose his lies over my truth. So don't come here blaming me for the mess you enabled. Her mouth opened, then closed. Daniel confided in me too, she finally said. He said you abandoned him. Then you're both liars. I closed the door in her face. The confrontation came on a Thursday afternoon in my office parking lot. I was walking to my car when I heard him yelling, Emily, we need to talk. Daniel stormed across the lot, his face red, his movements frantic. You ruined everything. The loan, the vendors, I didn't ruin anything, I said calmly. I just stopped fixing your mistakes. You reported me. You tanked my credit on purpose. I reported fraud. There's a difference. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something desperate and ugly. Please, just help me one more time. I'll pay you back, I swear. No, Emily. Security approached, alerted by my coworker who'd been watching from her car. Sir, you need to leave, the guard said firmly. Daniel looked between us, wild-eyed. Then the wedding is ruined. Are you happy now? He was escorted off the property, still yelling. I stood there shaking, my coworker's arm around my shoulders. You okay? She asked. Yeah, I whispered. I'm okay. The wedding was officially cancelled 3 days later. Lauren's savings, wiped out trying to cover Daniel's debts. Her credit, damaged by cards he'd opened in her name. The venue, the vendors, the dress, all gone. My cousin texted me the details, her messages full of shock and schadenfreude. Daniel had blamed everyone but himself. He disappeared for 2 days, ignoring calls, before finally resurfacing with excuses no one believed. Lauren was destroyed. And my mother was finally, slowly, starting to see the truth. Then Lauren asked to meet me. One last time. Almost said no. But something in her message, raw and broken, made me agree. We met at the same coffee shop. She looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. I'm sorry, she whispered before I even sat down. I didn't respond. I just waited. You were right about everything. Daniel drained my accounts. He lied about everything. He blamed you for all of it. Her voice cracked. How did you know who he really was? Finally, she was ready to listen. I told her everything. How I'd worked 2 jobs early in our relationship while Daniel built his business. How I'd paid his rent, his car payment, his phone bill. How every promise to pay me back vanished into new excuses. I thought I was helping someone I loved, I said quietly. I didn't realize I was enabling someone who'd never stand on his own. Lauren's face crumpled. Then why didn't you warn me? Question hung between us. I tried, I said. But you weren't listening. You wanted to win. You wanted to prove you were better than me. Pause. And I needed to let him show you himself. She covered her face with her hands, sobbing. Not because of Daniel, but because she finally understood what she'd actually stolen. I didn't take your fiancé, she whispered. I took your problem. I nodded slowly. Yeah, you did. Behind us, I heard the coffee shop door open. Turn. My mother stood there, frozen, clearly having heard everything. For the first time in my life, my mother apologized. We sat at that coffee shop table. Me, Lauren, and Mom, while the truth finally settled between us. I believed his charm over your stability, Mom said, her voice small. I thought you were being dramatic. I see now. You were the strong one all along. Lauren wiped her eyes. Daniel's gone. He left town 3 days ago. Tried asking friends for money. Everyone turned him down. Good, I said simply. Mom reached across the table. Can you forgive us? I looked at her hand, then at her face. Eventually, I said. But not today. She nodded, pulling back. Lauren spoke up, her voice shaky. I'm going to fix this. My credit, my savings, everything. I'm going to rebuild. Good, I said again. You should. We sat in silence for a while, the weight of everything finally lifting. They'd learned. Painfully. Expensively. But they'd learned. Daniel sent one final message 2 weeks later. You ruined my life. I read it twice. Then I deleted it without responding. My silence was the real victory. He'd wanted a reaction, anger, guilt, anything. Instead, he got nothing. I blocked his number, cleared my message history, and closed that chapter completely. That evening, I attended a small dinner party with coworkers. Someone asked casually, So, are you seeing anyone now? Smiled. No. And I'm not looking. Really? Why not? Because I'm enjoying peace, I said simply. And that's worth more than I ever realized. The table nodded, understanding. One coworker raised her glass. To peace. To peace, we echoed. Later that night, walking to my car under streetlights, I felt lighter than I had in years. No debt. No drama. No Daniel. Just me. 6 months passed. Lauren started therapy. She got a second job, slowly repairing her credit. We texted occasionally. Nothing deep, just small updates. My mother treated me differently now. With respect. With caution. Like she finally understood I wasn't someone to take for granted. I got another promotion. Moved into an even better apartment. Started taking painting classes on weekends. Life became full in ways that had nothing to do with anyone else. One Sunday Lauren called. I need to tell you something, she said. What? I saw Daniel. At a gas station. He looked bad. Really bad. Waited. He tried to talk to me. Said he'd changed. Asked if I'd give him another chance. He paused. I told him I'd rather be alone forever. Smiled. Good for you. I mean it. I'd rather have nothing than have someone like him. That's not having nothing, I said. That's having self-respect. She was quiet then. Thank you. For what? For letting me learn the hard way. A year after everything fell apart, I ran into an old friend at a bookstore. Emily Morrison, she gasped. Oh my God, I heard about what happened. Are you okay? Smiled. I'm better than okay. She looked surprised. Really? After everything with Daniel and your sister? Especially because of it, I said. Turns out losing the wrong people is actually winning. She laughed, then lowered her voice. I heard he's working at a call center now. Barely making rent. Good for him, I said, and I meant it without sarcasm. He'd finally hit the bottom I'd been protecting him from for years. We chatted for a few more minutes, then parted ways. As I left the bookstore, book in hand, I realized something. I didn't think about Daniel anymore. Not with anger. Not with sadness. I didn't think about him at all. That's when you know you've really moved on. At my second promotion celebration, my boss made a toast. To Emily. Someone who knows that the best revenge is a life well lived. Everyone cheered. I caught my reflection in the restaurant window. I looked different than I had 2 years ago. Stronger. Calmer. Free. After dinner, I walked home through the city, the night air cool and clear. My phone buzzed. Lauren, proud of you, sis. I smiled and replied, proud of you too. We were rebuilding, slowly, carefully, on new foundations. My mother had even started asking before offering opinions. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. That night, I stood in my apartment looking at everything I'd built. The furniture I'd chosen. The art on the walls. The life I'd created without anyone's interference. Done this. Me. Alone. And it was beautiful. People ask me sometimes if I regret how everything happened. I tell them the truth, no. My sister didn't steal my fiancé. She intercepted my mistake. She took the man I would have wasted more years on, and she learned the same lesson I did. Just faster and more expensively. Lauren's rebuilding her life now. She's careful, skeptical, stronger. My mother finally sees me clearly. And me. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I didn't destroy them. I simply stopped saving them. And that turned out to be all it took for everything to fall into place perfectly. Some people think cutting ties is cruel. But sometimes the kindest thing you can do is step back and let people face their own consequences. I didn't expose Daniel. I didn't post about him online. I didn't ruin his reputation. I just stopped being his safety net. And gravity did the rest. Now I know. Peace doesn't come from revenge. Comes from boundaries. They changed my life when they betrayed me. I changed it again when I walked away. And that second change. That was mine. That was freedom. That was everything.